Good morning, and it really is a good morning. I last night I had something of a scare, and I should explain that I have two medical conditions. I'm recovering from cancer. I've been recovering from cancer for a few years, and I'm also on the haemophilia scale. It's sometimes difficult to know which is the problem. I think this was the latter rather than the former, which is something of a relief. But what pleased me so much was after I phoned 111, a doctor came out. An out-of-hours doctor came to see me. I think partly because I'm alone at the moment and I don't have access to a car. I don't drive anyway. And he was the most charming individual, also from Oxford, so there was lots to talk about. And he even used the expression Occam's razor to me, which entertained me greatly. And just that reassurance and the knowledge that when push comes to shove, the NHS can produce the goods and can respond in a timely fashion. It meant I had almost no sleep because I think he came at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And, of course, I was worried. And anyway, I just thought I'd let you know. It's there's no certainty, and I must say I'm concerned that some of the follow-up scans and checks that I would have expected haven't happened, and that makes one a little anxious. But yes, we soldier on, and thank you for your kind wishes. I thought today it would be useful to talk about Robert Jenrick, this little Conservative leadership candidate and the former immigration minister. Now, I was very negative about Robert Jenrick before, and my picture of Jenrick was coloured heavily by his response to the Disney cartoons. In fact, I'm surprised that Disney didn't have a negative response, because Disney can be very proprietorial about its cartoons, particularly if they've been posted in public places without paying the requisite fee. And I have every suspicion that was also true. But I think Jenrick was absolutely wrong in that case. And today he's criticised the public use of the phrase Allahu Akbar, stating that its use during protests should lead to immediate arrests. Well, I don't understand what his thinking is there. The statement is fraught with misunderstandings, contradictions, and it warrants a pretty thorough examination and a look at the tweet that he put out, this dramatic message. I mean, he doesn't have the power to enforce such a draconian law, but simply that he's thinking about it makes one concerned, partly because, again, that anti-Islamic bias is coming through. And it's crucial to understand the meaning and the significance of Allahu Akbar. The phrase is translated as God is great. It's a common expression in the Muslim world, used in daily prayers, moments of gratitude, and various peaceful contexts. It's akin to the Christian exclamations of praise such as Hallelujah, God is good. And historically, Allahu Akbar has been a phrase of reverence and devotion long before extremists appropriated it for their own agenda. And by painting this phrase with a broad brush of suspicion, we risk alienating millions of Muslims who use it peacefully and spiritually, and not just Muslims. Those Christians who use Arabic would naturally use the expression Allahu Akbar. Jenrick himself acknowledged in his tweet that Allahu Akbar is spoken peacefully by millions of British Muslims. Yet his call for immediate arrest when this phrase is used in the context of a protest reveals a deep inconsistency. On the one hand, he recognises its peaceful use, and on the other, he equates the public utterance with criminal behaviour. This dual stance undermines his position and reveals a complete lack of nuanced understanding. And you can't you can't hold two positions at the same time about the same words if you're trying to make a point rather than start a debate. Start a debate by all means. Critics, including Muslim parliamentarians like Baroness Saida Warsi and MP Naz Shah, have rightly called out Jenrick's comments as Islamophobic and, more importantly, ignorant. Baroness Warsi has pointed out that the irony of Jenrick's stance, noting that British parliamentarians begin their sessions with prayers that are essentially their own view, or our own view of Allahu Akbar, is significant. It highlights a fundamental respect for expressions of faith at the very heart of British democracy. Now, I know there are people here who decry expressions of faith. I'm not one of them. And I think one should accept the multiplicity of faiths. And maybe I'm a little bit on to Pascal's wager. You know, you accept faith in the blind belief that maybe some of it is right, and if it is right, then you've backed the right side. If it's wrong, then who's going to know? But I also think that faith brings with it a cultural baggage which is so important in our everyday life. Naz Shah points out the danger of Jenrick's rhetoric, which risks equating all Muslims with extremism, and that is wrong. Such generalizations are not only unfair, but dangerous, fostering further division and mistrust in our society. And his remarks fail to differentiate between the peaceful religious expression and the misuse of religious language by extremists. I mean, there have been other words in the past taken from a religious context which have become abusive. And a lot of our language, a lot of our swear words have a Christian origin, have a religious origin. People distort the language of religion to their own end, of course. But it doesn't mean the original language of religion is wrong. Jenrick's comments must be seen in the context of his broader political positioning, of course. As a Conservative leadership candidate, his remarks are aimed at showcasing his tough stance on security. Well, he's out of power, so he can't really do anything at the moment. And this approach risks alienating communities and deepening social division. His association with figures like Suella Braverman, known for her controversial views on immigration and community relations, known for her behaviour at the dispatch box, encouraging racial segregation, branding entire communities as invaders and criminals, further complicates the position. If he wants success, he has to dissociate himself from the twits. And it appears that Jenrick is attempting to balance a hardline approach with occasional acknowledgement of peaceful religious practice. But that balancing act is untenable and counterproductive, and he needs to reject his past association if he's going to move forward. The Conservative Party as a whole needs to reject its past association, because the people who came out on the streets yesterday, that is the majority. So never again can Suella Braverman and her cronies, I was going to say crones, that's not correct, her cronies, never again can Suella Braverman and her cronies wave their hands and say the majority want to stop the boats. That is not true. It's the vocal minority that has seized control of the debate. the majority elected in Labour. And Keir Starmer would do well to remember that as well, and to get rid of the slogan, "Stop the boats." Sort out the problem with immigration. Stop the boats. It's an expression which has been hijacked by the far right. It no longer has relevance. It needs to be ditched. Save the migrants. Rescue the migrants from the traffickers. Down with the traffickers. Attack these smugglers. Catch the smugglers. I don't know what slogans would be appropriate now, but "Stop the boats" needs to go. It's wrong. The French are even saying that the "Stop the Boats" policy is the policy that is leading directly to the overcrowding on the boats and to the deaths. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has criticised Jenrick's stand, highlighting the need for community cohesion rather than this divisive rhetoric. Indeed, the vast majority of the British public desires unity and mutual respect among different communities. I was talking to somebody a few minutes ago, a friend from Bristol, at Bristol University, who was saying that he lives on West Street. That's a street in Bristol which boasts LGBTQ plus pubs and a range of immigration offices. It was a street targeted by the far-right marching groups, and they weren't able to march there. And instead, this peaceful march took place in Bristol. Trying to arrange a far-right march in Bristol. He was saying it's like trying to organise a beer festival in Saudi Arabia, and it's there is madness in the idea that Suella Braverman was banging on about all those for all those months, that the majority want to stop the boats. The majority were numbed to silence, and now they're getting up and they're calling out. We need to process the people who come here seeking our aid. We need to recognise those core values of hospitality and fairness. We need, of course, to stop the smugglers and stop the trafficking, but this idea of terror, rule by a fear of Rwanda, that isn't the way forward. In his clarification, Jenrick noted that extremists misuse common expressions for their ends. Of course they do. It's undoubtedly true. But the solution is not to criminalise the expression itself, but to address the misuse directly. Blanket policies that fail to distinguish between peaceful protest or peaceful practice and extremist appropriation do more harm than good. They undermine the principles of justice and the principles of unity and fairness that should guide our legal and our government and social systems. Lastly, Jenrick's comments on two-tiered policing deserve scrutiny. His claim that police treat left-wing protesters with more leniency than right-wing ones fuels further division and is complete rubbish. You know, the Just Stop Oil were people were imprisoned for having a Zoom meeting. I think the social media boffins who have been promoting the far-right agenda should be very careful, because I think to establish very firmly that there is equality under the law, and remember Mr. Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, has been a Director of Public Prosecution. This is his area. This is what he understands. This is in his blood. And a fair approach would be to clamp down on these far-right agitators, simply for... they're not even having Zoom meetings. They are promoting propaganda and they are fueling this movement which has been so vocal for so long. Effective policing should be impartial, and it should be about maintaining public safety without favouring any one group. And Jenrick is putting forward an idea that is about the politicisation of policing. It's counterproductive to the goal of fair law enforcement. And if he wants to be the leader of the Conservative Party, if he wants to be the leader of the party that puts law first, then he needs to put law first and stop these stupid games with language. So his criticism of the phrase Allahu Akbar reveals a lack of understanding, a lack of education. And again, I come back to this thing that we need better education to understand what people who have come into our country and may not share all our cultural norms, what they're actually talking about. Because the Allahu Akbar is central to what it is to be British. It's central, incidentally, to what it is to be American. In God we trust. While security concerns are legitimate, they must be addressed with nuance, with respect for peaceful religious practices, and leaders should foster proper unity, promote proper dialogue, and ensure that policies are fair and just for all communities. Only then can we begin to build a society with true values and that respects the genuine diversity that our country has embraced. And we have embraced it.